Hello, and welcome to the North Coast Journal Preview. This is a show where we take a look at what's coming to this week's edition of the North Coast Journal. I am your host, Tanya Schrum, and we are joined by North Coast Journal's news editor, Thadeus Greenson, and arts and features editor, Jennifer Fumiko Cahill. Welcome to you both. It's great to see you.
Likewise, Tanya. How you doing?
I'm doing great, and I'm really excited about what's coming to this week's edition. Would you like to fill us in on Kimberly Wear's cover story, Thad?
Absolutely, Tanya. So Kim's story this week is looking at the local teen courts, which are run through the Boys and Girls Club of the Redwoods, and offer kind of an alternative juvenile justice system to the more traditional routes of either the courts or disciplinary processes in schools. And so Kim has been working on this for a while and got to sit in on a couple of hearings and caught up with all the principals involved in putting on this program. And it's a neat story about efforts to really kind of keep kids out of the traditional juvenile justice system and also teach them some problem solving and restorative justice principles.
Yeah, and it was really interesting, some of the statistical breakdown of how effective it is.
Yeah, the program, at least according to the last, they say annual report, but I think the report covered multiple years. But it's remarkably effective. Has a recidivism rate of just 10%, which means that folks who are go through the process as they don't call them defendants, but as somebody who is being answered, or, is answering for their behavior. Only 10% of those then did something else to get in trouble over the course of that review, which is really impressive and is much more is a much lower rate than traditional justice system, both adult and juvenile see. So that is really positive. And then it's from all accounts, it's just a positive experience for both the students who are going through the disciplinary process themselves, and then students who volunteer to help in some capacity or another with the process. So the way it works is they have different nomenclature than the courts because they want it to be restorative. They do not want it to be a punitive process. So instead of attorneys, they have advocates. Instead of sentences, they have outcomes, or and then instead of instead of trials, they have hearings. But the way it works basically is it's overseen by a superior court judge, Lawrence Killeran currently, and then but everybody else in the proceedings, the advocates, the jury, are all student volunteers, and they much like a typical court proceeding, the advocate kind of is there to argue for their client, who in this case is a peer, and the juror, but unlike the typical justice system, the jurors get to ask questions, so they get to talk, and it's much more interactive, and it's really about putting somebody's alleged offense in the broader context of both their lives and but then also the impact on the school community, the impact on whoever was affected by their behavior, and trying to find a just resolution, rather than things like suspensions or other school disciplinary actions. These resolutions look like community service, or attending a certain self-improvement class, or even doing something like making dinner for their family. And it's so it's really trying to be aimed at being a healing process. And according to the folks Kim talked to, it just got really kind of positive results.
I have never heard of something like this, and I just thought it was such a great idea.
Yeah, they're pretty common throughout the state now, but Humboldt County holds the distinction of having the first teen court, which I didn't know until reading Kim's story. But the first one in California started here in the 1990s and continued strong for a while, and then it kind of went on hiatus for a little while due to lack of adult volunteers to see the process through. And then actually retired Judge Christopher Wilson kind of then championed it, restarting it in a more robust fashion and handing it off to the Boys and Girls Clubs of the Redwoods to run. So it's kind of run outside the court, but with court participation.
And most of the time participating in this prevents any kind of record.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up, Tanya. That is one of the biggest things is it does it does prevent somebody from having either a criminal juvenile record or even a school disciplinary record for these offenses. And so it's a way to kind of resolve things off the books, so to speak. So it does not follow the student through the rest of their lives, which is huge.
It's really amazing.
I was struck by the part of Kim's story where she shared how, after talking to, this young person who's decided to come to teen court with their issue, instead of saying like, you're a terrible person, you did this terrible thing and you're terrible forever, they kind of say like, listen, you have these good qualities.
Mm-hmm.
You can build on this. Here are, some positive foundations you have. You don't have to keep, screwing up. You don't have to keep doing this. You are a person with empathy. You're a person who, can, collaborate with other people. And it's really something to see how building people up makes a difference.
It's a darn shame that we can't take some of that and move it on to adult court. We know you stole this car, Jimmy, but you have all these great qualities.
Well, I will say, Tanya, that some tribal courts are ahead of our traditional superior court system in that regard, and are taking steps to take a more holistic approach to justice, and especially in lower level cases. But to dovetail off what Jen was saying, I think another really strong thing about the program is that it seems to want to keep, once folks kind of come into this teen court system, to keep them engaged. And so there are places for their advocate to follow up with them a couple months after the proceeding to check in on their progress toward whatever the resolution is. But then also often it's required that somebody who's been through the system to then come back and serve as a juror. So it keeps them kind of active with this the support system that is designed to, yes, hold them accountable, but also, as Jen said, really provide positive reinforcement and help kind of nudge and guide on a more positive path, which I think is really, really strong.
And I think that's the perfect highlight, is it creates a support system that maybe helps create positive paths instead of going back to whatever kind of put them in that situation in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
The connection.
And I have to say also, just from his comments in the piece, it really seems like Judge Killoran is a great fit for the program. He seems to have a very kind of easygoing demeanor, is very calm. And then, I just loved his quote. He said, basically that his when it came that Christopher Wilson, retired Judge Wilson, was looking for somebody to take this on, it came at a time in Judge Killoran's life when his kids were older. He was no longer volunteering to coach for their teams and was kind of looking for a way to stay engaged with youth activities, and thought it would be a good fit. And he says that he'll do it as long as they'll keep having him back. So it's good.
That's wonderful. And if adults are interested in getting involved, who would be the best contact?
The Boys and Girls Club of the Redwoods is the point of contact. And they do need multiple levels of volunteers, especially in Fortuna, where they're just starting out a fairly new teen court for the Eel River Valley. So yeah, folks who want to get involved in a mentorship role or an advisory role, reach out to the Boys and Girls Club.
That's amazing. Thank you to Kim, and thank you for giving us all of the highlights. I encourage everybody to pick up this week's journal and read the entire story. And we're going to shove into some other news that is kind of an ongoing saga that you're going to give us the new pieces to.
Yes, the new pieces, surely not the last though. But yeah, big news broke out of Eureka City Schools last week. I was at their board meeting on Thursday, when the Board of Trustees decided unanimously in closed session not to grant another extension request to this mysterious developer, AMG Communities Jacobs LLC, which has been in contract since December, for a property exchange agreement for the blighted former Jacobs Middle School property on Allard Avenue. So this, as everybody will remember, I'm sure, this deal we've written about it way more than I care to think about over the past 9 months. But the deal would have seen the district trade the Jacobs, quote unquote, trade the Jacobs property for a small residential property on I Street and a cash payment of $5.35 million to this LLC that was formed and incorporated just days before this deal was finalized, and whose principals have never been publicly revealed. So they've been represented publicly by a spokesperson and an attorney, Brad Johnson, who did all of the negotiating on behalf of the developers and signed the contract with the school district. But the deal has kind of remained mysterious for months and months now. And so the district staff kind of reported to the board that they felt that on the district end, everything was in line to close the deal by the new deadline that had been August 9th. And yet the developer had asked for this extension, quote, out past November. And they didn't see any reason for it. On the developer side, the developer was tasked with making some improvements to the I Street property before the deal could go through. But the agreement had a clause that if they couldn't, make those improvements by the deadline, they could just provide the district with a cash payment in lieu of making those. So the district was kind of saying it's time to move forward, and so the board, like I said, unanimously approved rejecting the extension request. And then the following day, on August 9th, the day of the deadline, AMG Community sent out a press release statement basically saying that they were withdrawing from the deal due to what they deemed as opposition from city officials to changing the zoning on the property. Now, I caught up with a couple of city officials on Friday, the day that that statement came out, and they just flatly denied that that's the case. Miles Slattery, the city manager, called it laughable, and the director of community development services pointed out that the city had tried repeatedly to engage with AMG Communities, had reached out to their attorney, their spokesperson, the email address on their website, and just not gotten any response. So, contrary to the city kind of pushing back on any zoning things, they never heard any zoning requests from these would-be developers. And to the point of some frustration, it sounds like, on part of the city. And and they also said it's very atypical for not just a large scale development, but any type of development happening in the city, that usually the developer is in contact with the city even before making an offer on a property to inquire about about easements, about zoning restrictions, and all the things that you might have questions about if you were looking to develop a property.
Absolutely. I was going to put, and so what is next?
Well, the statement so on the district side, the district staff is going to come back to the board later this month with some options of how to move forward. And the California Highway Patrol had reportedly had a $4 million purchase offer on the table for the Jacobs property, looking to relocate its Northern Humboldt headquarters to the site. And the district and CHP were moving toward finalizing that agreement when AMG kind of popped out of nowhere with this too good to be true exchange offer. So reportedly, CHP is still interested in the property. So presumably that will be an option presented to the board, is going back to re-engage with CHP. AMG in its statement also basically said that if Measure F, which is the ballot initiative bankrolled heavily to the tune of almost $1 million now by Rob Arkley's Security National Company in Eureka, that would basically block city plans to turn municipally owned parking lots in downtown and Old Town into housing developments, and also rezone the Jacobs property for multifamily housing. AMG kind of indicated that if that measure passes, that they may look to re-engage and with Eureka City Schools and still be interested in acquiring the Jacobs property. So I imagine some form of those two options, and probably some options we don't know about, will be presented to the board, which will then decide kind of how to best proceed. And then meanwhile,
well,
of course,
I know you will.
Oh, I'm sorry. Say that again.
Oh, no. And I said, and I know you will continue to keep us informed of how the chips fall here.
Yes, absolutely. I will be continuing to attend school board meetings and reporting out. And then, obviously, then all eyes will look to the November and how the Measure F, the so-called Housing for All and Downtown Vitality Initiative, fares at the polls. And that may have some impact on what comes next for the property, too.
All right. All right, Thad. Well, before we move on, do you have any final thoughts about this story?
Well, we actually have some other thoughts that we shared in this week's paper and editorial.
So many thoughts.
So I'd really encourage folks to check that out, and I think it gives, in really clear terms, our view of a kind of blow-by-blow summation of what happened and why. I'm trying to connect some of the dots in this, mystery offer from a mystery developer that all of a sudden disappeared for unclear reasons.
Well, that's very exciting. I know I will pick up my copy of the journal today, and I hope everybody does the same to get into that editorial piece. And with that, we're going to pivot to Jennifer, and we're going to talk about some more good news about new things coming to Fortuna.
Yes, I have good news for Fortunans. Fortunans and people who are, Fortuna and South. Because it turns out that a lot of them have been driving up to Eureka for Asian food items. So Eureka does pretty good actually for, shopping for Asian food ingredients. We have a number of Lao and Hmong shops. Shout out to the Lao Oriental shop in Henderson Center and the Little Japan shop also in Henderson. How did Henderson become this Asian mecca? It did. But Asia's Best, tucked behind the Sacred Heart Church on Myrtle Avenue, is like a tiny store. It expanded, but still tiny. And since it is, covering such a broad range of foods, it's packed. I expected the store in Fortuna that they are opening, don't worry, they're still keeping the one in Eureka, to be big. But I did not expect it to be this big. When I went in, I was like, it's like walking into a casino. You're just like, there I am. You're just on the floor surrounded. And I had, my knees went a little weak going in the instant noodle aisle. It was just two sides, like a wonderful hallway. I think you could have a good wedding there. But this store has everything. Theda and June Ignacio, who are the wife and husband who run the shop, they're kind of incredible. They opened this 8,500 square foot Asian ingredient store in Fortuna, which is not famous for its Asian populations. It has, a couple of Asian restaurants, but it has no Asian markets to speak of. And it was a big risk, but this is the property they found. They were looking for a larger store, and this is what they found. They were like, we're going to go for it. And after a long wait, they've been paying rent on it for like a year. They finally were able to open. They had their official opening. And so far they're doing well because they're discovering that not only are more people interested than maybe previously in getting Asian ingredients, but a lot of their regular customers in Eureka are just happy that there's a place further south. It turns out that a lot of them were coming from the Eel River Valley, sometimes Garberville, further down. So it's been like a little happy reunion over there. And I spoke to them after I had a dizzying, hour touring the store by myself. Were you looking for a tomahawk steak? Because they have them in their freezers. What kind of fish balls do you need? Because they have all the fish balls. The same thing with lumpia. Can you think of 6 kinds of lumpia? I can now. And there are.
That's where you got me right at the beginning. Lumpia,
right?
Lumpia, Lumpia. Yes, give it.
Apparently, they're real big in the holidays. So if you're buying them for the holidays, you got to get there fast. Also, I know that I saw Thad twitch a little when I told him that there were 3 freezers full of dumplings and meat buns. Plus, they are continuing all the wonderful Filipino baked goods that they have, which, you know, what I love about Filipino baked goods is it's a different flavor range. There's a lot of, you know, Spanish influence, but it's like soft and sweet. Like when you need comfort, when you need to be fed like a baby, perhaps with the addition of coconut and pineapple, like a tropical baby, this is what you need. There are these wonderful señorita rolls that are filled with just butter and granulated sugar mixed together in a roll. It's like your mom just loves you and was like, here. It's so delightful. So there's that. They have just a wild array because, you know, when they opened up, like June was telling me, he was like, yeah, we realized there's like 30 Filipinos in town. We can't just do Filipino goods. So they made it Pan-Asian. They are, you know, out here in Eureka selling Micronesian people betel nuts. Time to quit smoking, switch to betel nuts, maybe. They are, you know, they've got more in the way of Lao and Hmong customers up north in Eureka, and more demand for things like Korean and Japanese foods in Fortuna. And they're really seeing the difference in the customers and, you know, in their requests, and they really do follow requests. Most of the stuff that they have in the way of prepared foods are things that customers requested. Like there's a lot of like Malaysian and Indian paratha and frozen curries and things like that. So I know it's a long way to tandoori bites when you're down in Fortuna. They have all kinds of really great stuff. Did you need stir-fried frog legs in your freezer? Because they have them. Also great, they are planning to have a fish counter eventually, and also a to-go prepared food counter. That's right. We're 100% going to roll up and get lumpia to go, Tanya. But it's really lovely to see the kind of community aspect of it, because like a lot of, you know, what I see in terms of like, you know, festivals and things like that, like we just had the Obon Festival, right? And what you see at the Obon Festival in the Creamery District is it's a Japanese tradition to honor your ancestors, but you really see not only a Pan-Asian, but a pan-community celebration. Everybody comes together to take part in this. And in the same way, you know, you have this market that covers everything. If we were in LA, you know, we'd have, you know, just a Filipino store and, you know, just an Indian store, just a Malaysian store, but we're here. So everybody kind of comes here, and it means a lot of cultural trade too, and recipe sharing. And one of the things that I really enjoyed talking to them about was, well, you should know that Theda has done some catering, and she is a fantastic cook. So if there's something there and you're like, I just am not sure about, I'm curious about this, but I don't know how to use it, you know, she's the person to ask, and she can tell you, or she can guide you maybe to find out. Some of the stuff that they have in there is stuff that they're not familiar with, you know, those customer requests. And so they get all kinds of suggestions. They see people using, like they were saying how, you know, the Mexican customers who've come in were kind of shocked to see avocado ice cream, which is very like just something you find in the supermarket in the Philippines. But then it grew on them, and it's become like a really popular item with that segment of their customer base. And in the same way, they're also seeing like white people come in and buy the spicy vinegar that Filipinos use to season meat and things like that, and they're using it to make salad dressing. Everybody is kind of doing something different and, trying each other's foods, trying each other's, recipes and things like that. And talking to each other and getting hints about how to cook this, that, or the other thing has been part of the fun of having the Eureka store. And they're looking forward to more of that in Fortuna. It's been pretty cool.
That's just fantastic. And it just creates the melting pot that should be our community.
I just want to go hang out there and like eat snacks, like eat banana chips and just like, so what are you going to do with that?
Start gossiping. Yeah, exactly. What are you planning to do?
Just going to stand there with a notebook and be like, oh yeah, that's what you do with that chicken? Like, oh my God, the freezers are crazy. The freezers are crazy. Aside from the dumplings, they have these like freestanding freezers. And like, I know that it's, a decade ago or something, everybody, all the bougie restaurants got into tip to tail eating, using everything in an animal. If you have a recipe that requires a kind of like neck bones or, I don't know, pig ears or whatever it is that you're looking for in terms of like organ meats and things like that, they have it. They've got all of it. If you are looking for a squab, or a little package of frozen quails. Come on, they're cute. It's like you're a giant eating tiny chickens. They have everything. And honestly, you have no excuse to make weak ramen anymore because all the bones are there for your broth.
That's true. We have no excuse to say like, oh, if only I was in the Bay Area. It's come to us.
That's right. And also, I know some of you people out there, you were at a party, you tried some of that Langoma chili crisp, and now you're hooked. Girl, they have it in 24-ounce jars, like a jar of spaghetti sauce, but chili crisp.
Wow.
I mean, I won't be responsible for what happens to your life when you bring that home, but yeah.
I am so excited. And another reason to go check out some new stuff in Fortuna.
I know. Between that and then they've got the Il Forno pastry shop, a lot is happening in Fortuna.
It's up and coming. Well, Jennifer, thank you so much. I think that wraps up our time for this week. The current edition of the North Coast Journal is available on newsstands now. Pick up your copy today, read it cover to cover, or of course you can find it online for the digital fair at northcoastjournal.com. I am Tanya Schrum. Thanks for being with us and staying informed and supportive of our North Coast community. Have a great week.